Good to see everyone. Jam-packed day in college football. So that means it's a jam-packed day here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you stopping by as always. Let's get right to it. We've got about 25 on the line. Hope to have many more. Let's get 250, 300 folks in here. If anybody out there that you know of loves college football, likes college football, tolerates college football, whatever the case might be, you can let them know that the Voice of College Football is on the line. And so here we go with the news of the day before we dive into our topic of the day. And I'm going to be reading this along with all of you, and maybe many of you know a whole lot more about it than I do at this point, because I'm going to get into it fresh and new. Have yet to review the Super League that's being proposed. Amazon links in the description section of all the videos. What does that mean? That means that when you grab the Amazon link that we provide, shop on Amazon using our link, it means absolutely nothing to you. It's the same exact shopping experience, doesn't change one bit, doesn't cost you a penny, doesn't change your shopping experience. What it does, it helps support the Voice of College Football. Hit the like button. You're already here. You're going to love the show. You can't love the show, though, on YouTube. You can only like. Maybe we can put in a special dispensation for the Voice of College Football that we add the love button for the Voice of College Football. We would expect YouTube to probably meet those demands at our beck and call and get that done for a special dispensation here at the Voice of College Football, the love button. All right. A lot going on here today, in addition to what we've got right now in the moment with all of you at 7 o'clock Eastern time over on the Big 12 channel. Yes, we've got a Big 12 channel. You should be subscribed. It's the Big 12 Fan Zone with Joey Foster. That's at 7 o'clock Eastern time over on the Big 12 channel. 8 o'clock Eastern time over on the Clemson channel with Jordan Bowman and Tiger Paw Craven. It's Clemson Tigers Live, which reminds me that coming up on Saturday night, we are going live after the Clemson spring game. So we've got Jason Priester from allclemsontigers.com and myself going live after the Clemson spring game, approximately 8 o'clock Eastern time, Saturday night. That will be on the Clemson channel. All right. A few news and notes before we get to our topic of the night. And of course, we have left the link in the chat. Give me a ring. It's actually a StreamYard link, but you get it. Give me a ring. You don't have to turn on the camera. We don't need to see you. We would love to see you. But if you would prefer the old-fashioned standard kind of way, you can use it as a phone line. So the StreamYard links in the live chat. Give me a call about anything about college football. It does not have to be about our particular topic today. And as I look at the Athletic here, I'm reminded that it is Major League Baseball season. And it strikes me odd every couple weeks that I'm reminded that, yeah, it's Major League Baseball season. And if this were 5 or 10 years ago, 20, 25, 40 years ago, this would mean everything to me. Pirates lead the Nationals 5-1 in the third inning. It's Cleveland 3, Minnesota 1, top of the sixth in Minneapolis. St. Louis trails the Marlins 5-3 in the sixth. You got Detroit 1, Mets nothing, top of 7. And then in just a few minutes, we've got a bunch of hockey games. That's what those are. Okay. All right. We'll get to it. But we did have a commitment of note today. So commitments coming in today at places like Syracuse, Texas A&M, another one from Syracuse and Eastern Michigan and Wake Forest. However, Mizzou and Eli Drinkwitz has picked up the 6th-rated quarterback in the country. His name is Matt Zollers out of Royersford, Pennsylvania. Say that 3 times fast. Royersford, Pennsylvania. Quarterback at 6'3.5", 205, 6th-rated quarterback, number 1 rated player in the state of Pennsylvania. Number 1 rated player in PA has committed to Missouri. 62nd rated player in the nation. Don't know anything about him except for that. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the country, apparently, and he is committed to Eli Drinkwitz and Mizzou. So Mizzou, the recruiting tells us that they're going to be able to sustain to a certain point what they established here this past season at 11-2 with a Cotton Bowl win against Ohio State. Next up, we wanted to hit very briefly because we just posted a video on this topic. Florida State motions to dismiss ACC lawsuit is denied by a North Carolina judge. So Florida State had a motion in play to dismiss the ACC lawsuit, but the North Carolina judge says, no, we want to hear the case. And so the judge denied 2 motions by Florida State to dismiss or stay a lawsuit filed by the ACC that the league hopes will force the school to honor its grant of rights agreement, pay the conference about $500 million if it hopes to exit for another conference before 2036. 2036, that still seems like it's forever away. It's not. The ruling by Judge Lewis Bledsoe is seen as a significant win for the ACC. Is that true? Again, check out the video that we just posted with Tony Siracusa from Last Word on College Football. Excellent 30-minute conversation breaking all this down. Florida State versus the ACC, Clemson versus the ACC, what this motion attempt and now denial by the North Carolina judge Bledsoe means, what the Clemson case looks like at this point. This next round is basically the reversal of the same thing with the ACC in court in Florida, and that comes up and is due next week. So again, we dove into all that with Tony Siracusa, Last Word on College Football. Check out the video. It's a good one. All right, let's get to the situation at hand. And again, I have yet to dive into this, but we are going to do much more with this particular topic. First of all, because you guys want us to, because that's what you're interested in, but well beyond that, because this is what's going on with college football right now. And this is the future of college football. We can't deny it at this point. So that doesn't mean that this is going to take place. That doesn't mean that that model is going to take place. It doesn't mean that any one particular projection is going to be the final result. All of this is speculation founded in some fact, in discussion that is real, that is legit. So when you read these various models and these predictions, let's understand that most likely none of those are going to take place to a T, but they're all showing us where we're headed in some fashion. And come to the same conclusion when I throw out my projections. I won't call them predictions because I don't make predictions on this sort of thing, but I do make projections. And it's interesting that this deal is 80 teams. I will be producing a video that is going to be basically not my projection or prediction where this is all going to land, but it's more what I believe college football should do. And I've got a 6-team conference, or I'm sorry, a 6-conference setup of 12 teams, 72 teams, and it's pretty ironclad. I do believe you're going to have some holes to poke in it because you cannot keep all the rivalries and all the continuity together across the board. It's impossible. Yes, impossible with that many teams. But I've got a 72-team model myself in 6 conferences, and it's pretty much an updated version of what I unveiled years ago, 72 teams, 6 conferences. Before we get to this article, let's take our first call. We got the Real MVP on the line. What's going on, sir?
Well, I was fascinated when I read this article. There was a lot of questions that left to be desired when reading this article. But at first, I was very skeptical of this idea. But the more I read into it, it makes sense. So you haven't read any of this article, right, Mark?
I've glanced through it, so I
Okay.
have an idea of what's there, but not
So
really.
what's the main thing is there's actually 7 divisions of 10 teams, which is your 69 Power 4 teams plus Notre Dame that are locked into their places, okay? So they can never be relegated to G5 or anything like that. And then you're going to have this 8th division of the elite G5 teams, okay? That's going to consist of 10 teams. And every year that division will produce a playoff team for at least one.
Yeah, I do understand that there's some kind of a Premier Soccer League feel to this or approach to this.
There is. And my issue with this, Mark, is we're just doing a half C of the G5 again. Listen, I don't just kick them out. Just kick them out. We don't need to do this half in, half out measure with the G5. And that's what we're doing with this model as well.
Okay, so when you say that, do you mean what is currently the G5 or what you would project it to be? Meaning that there could be some G5 type schools that are currently masquerading as Power 5 teams that you would kick out.
I wouldn't kick anybody out, Mark. I don't
Okay.
believe in kicking anybody out. So I would just say anybody who's excluded from the G.
We may have lost you, Daryl. If you're still with us. All right, Daryl. If you can hear me, click out and come back in and we'll take your
I'm
call.
in, Mark.
There you
Sorry, I
go.
had an
Okay.
issue. So I would keep the 70 teams in, and I would leave everybody else out.
Okay, so you're going to go with the current configuration, and SMU just snuck in, and they're good to go. You got 70 teams. There we go. We do know that there's going to be upheaval, most likely, even though you remind us from time to time that Florida State and Clemson are still in the ACC. But there could be some upheaval there.
Well, why
So
would
what
there
if,
be upheaval with this model?
well, I haven't read through the situation, so I don't know what the revenue sharing looks like.
The name brand schools get more money than the non-name brand schools.
Okay. I'm going to come up with my own formula, and I've been wanting to do that and have it in my head and have for a couple years. So maybe I'm a little late to the party in terms of countering what I'm going to read here, but I think that basically before I unveil it completely and think about it all the way through, I'll say it this way, that you could have a revenue sharing system that would look something similar to this. Roughly a third of the money would be shared evenly among whomever makes the cut. And then roughly a third would be some type of distribution based on your popularity. If you're one of the major schools that's bringing in 6, 8, 10 million viewers every time you step on the field versus 500,000 people to watch Wake Forest and Boston College, then you should be rewarded for that and recognized. And then the other third would be uh, based on, again, what that school is able to generate through ticket prices, through merchandise, through all the other ways that they're able to make money, NIL collectives and such. That's how I would make it equitable on one hand, understanding, hey, we're all in this together. Therefore, part of the pot we are going to share, regardless of what your contribution is. But this other portion over here needs to go to the schools that are carrying this entire sport.
And I don't have a real issue with that. The only thing I would like to add is like a performance incentive as well, because I think I just want as a little guy to have a chance to make more money and maybe improve my program.
So the performance incentive is Wake Forest goes to the ACC championship game, and even though nobody watched them all season, they still performed on the field.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's a more equitable way of distributing this as well. You're giving them a shot at making some extra money. You're giving them a chance. You're just
And
not
saying,
completely
yeah,
leaving them to dry.
you were able to do more with less. Now we're going to give you a little bit more to reward you, and maybe you'll be able to sustain that.
Right. Now, something else they didn't talk about at all in this piece is how these divisions would be allocated. So, with each having 10 teams, how are you going to make it equitable? Because each division is going to have at least one playoff team. So, the winner of the division gets a playoff team. Now, they talk about wild cards. Now, I don't know if that's just the second place team in each division gets a wild card, or they do it by rankings or whatnot. But in my opinion, based on the Southeast and the Big Ten status, it could be pretty unfair if they're all placed in one or two divisions, and then the Big Ten or the Big 12 and the ACC have a few other divisions.
So let me take a shot at this because I did glance through this and I think I caught this. They want to make this, and I am in full support of this, an NFL model in this way that they're not going to rely on people's rankings. We're done with committees, and you make it in such a way that the records and the performance on the field produce the wild cards, and it's objective.
Right, but my issue is if you have a division with Alabama, Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State, that division is so much tougher than any other possible division. That's not fair to me. So how are you going to make it equitable to where there's a like balance for every division?
All right. Well, I'm going to craft an 80-team super conference, I guess, to counter this, just to basically say this is how I would fill in the slots since they haven't given that to us. So basically, we're needing to come up with 10 schools that are going to be worthy of elevation.
Right. That's the hardest part.
Okay, here we go. Is that Boise State, Memphis, Tulane, Fresno State, San Diego State, Army, Navy? We're at 7.
Tulane, Troy.
Did you say Troy?
Yeah, and Tulane.
I said Tulane. Troy, okay. That's 8.
Gets hard real quick, don't it?
Appalachian State and Rice? I don't know. I'd have to look at the those last few that would be in the door. If this does take hold, boy, they should be hitting their knees, thanking Almighty God that they somehow survived this and got in with the cool kids and are going to make a boatload of money.
Well, they talk about how for the other 50 schools that don't get in, if they perform well enough, they can be promoted into the 80, and then those who do bad will get relegated back into the 50. Now, it doesn't say how many will get promoted, how many gets relegated, but
can you imagine? That is going to be a revolving door because, as we just outlined, regardless of how that gets selected at the bottom of this 80 list, those final 10 are going to be shaky. And those top of the other league, the 50, the Texas San Antonios, as is being mentioned here by Ralph, and Western Kentucky by Mark and others, they're just going to revolve in the door. Well, the two teams we forgot. Washington State and Oregon State. Thank you, D-Rock Irish. Washington State, Oregon State. So forget two of those weak schools that I just mentioned and put in Washington State, Oregon State.
Right. I just don't think they can compete, as I have been saying for a while, with anybody else. You're going to put them with a division winner on an equal level as somebody like Michigan, Ohio State, Bama, and Georgia. And we're talking about this as a money revenue generating thing. How much disproportionate amount of money is the other 7 divisions going to make compared to this one division?
Why do we think that the divisions are going to be sliced up in that manner?
Well, it mentions in the article how the bottom, the team 71 through 80, can get promoted and relegated.
Oh, they're going to be their own division?
Yeah, they're all going to be their own division. and they're going to have a
Okay.
playoff spot.
Well, we're going to go through the article here in a second. I'll pick it apart, but I don't know what their reasoning is there.
Right. And
Why,
I
why,
don't,
why can't those teams be scattered in the other divisions based on geography, let's say? And if somebody elevates, if James Madison dominates a group of 5, they elevate, they kick out Tulane, then you just displace them and just put them in the same spot.
well, I think that would make too much sense, Mark.
Who's our 10 here? Again, we forget about Washington State, Oregon State. So Washington State, Oregon State's 2. Memphis, Tulane's 4. Army and Navy, if they would make the cut, is 6. Fresno State, San Diego State is 8.
Boise
I guess
State.
Air Force, right? Well, we got to throw
Boise
them in
State.
Military Academy in Boise State. That might be our 10 right there, unless we're forgetting someone. I like that 10 right there.
Yeah. I mean, you can
Those
have an
might-
argument for like a UTSA and teams like that, or a Troy, but
Yeah, from a tradition standpoint, I would go with the 3 military academies myself.
I got you. So, do you think this is going to happen, this type of model? What are you
Well,
percentage of?
I said this off the top that there are a zillion models out there, including mine, but I never claim to be predicting that anything that I throw out there is coming true. I basically say this is one way to look at it. And, you've seen the videos where I size up the academics and the football and the whole deal, the media markets and all that business. I would highly doubt if any one of these systems that we see is going to be the system, but they're all interesting, and they're all, especially this one, this one is the most creative and unique that we've seen, and they're all founded in some real discussion. I know that there are quotes in there by chancellors and other administrators. So this stuff's being bantied about. I think it's about an 85% certainty that something's going to happen that's going to be cataclysmic.
Okay, and
Yeah.
something else I was going to ask you is, since this model seems like the NFL is going to basically take ownership of college football based on my reading of the article, do you think this could be like minor league baseball, where if you see an athlete like Caleb Downs do exceptionally well, then the New York Jets can pick him up since he's part of their feeder system and just put him into their lineup?
Oh boy, I hope not. So you're talking about in mid-season? What is the connection? Now this very much looks like the NFL, but that doesn't mean that there's a connection to the NFL. Those are
Well,
two
they
different
talk
things.
from my reading. Let me go to the
Okay.
specific line in the article. They talked about how the NFL, while it has a best interest of a feeder system. So there is an implication near the bottom of the article where it talks about this guy. I don't know how to pronounce his name. It's spelled Rolapp. He was involved in the NFL's TV deal, and they're thinking the NFL has enough money to basically pay the athletes of college football going forward, because the NCAA doesn't have enough money to obviously pay all the athletes and stuff, and that would solve all the cash flow problems of the sport.
Okay.
So it'd be very similar to what Florida State was trying to do with J.P. Morgan and hired them as a private equity firm.
Mm-hmm. So you just answered my next question, because my next topic in all this, and I was hoping to get it answered as I was delving through, and you just answered it for me, was one of the main tenets of this entire conversation during realignment is that there are going to be schools left by the wayside because they just don't bring in enough money. Therefore, they don't have enough value to hang with everyone else. So they're going to be discarded because they don't add to the television contracts. But if the NFL is supplementing this, ouch.
Right. I was watching The Herd with Colin Cowherd, and he was even talking about the NFL interest in college football. And that would be my concern is like if this turns into basically minor league sports, like what's the connection going to be to the teams, the players, and the championship at the end of the season, Mark? Because imagine if you're an Ohio State fan, you've got Caleb Downs and Mecca Ibuka and all this stuff, and then mid-season, like half your team's gone. Like what's the connection there going to be?
There is no connection. That would kill it right there. I just can't imagine that anyone with any sense believes that that would be uh, palpable and would be uh, embraced by the college football fan.
Well, Mark, let me ask you this: when was the last time the concerns of the college football fan have been addressed or met?
Well, at some point, they're going to have to be met because people are going to get turned off by this.
Well, I'm afraid, and I think Tim Prangley, if he's in here, he's mentioned it before. He's afraid they're basically going to kill the golden goose.
Yeah. Yeah, there is a way to screw this up, and the way to screw it up is to sever loyalties. This is what keeps college football fans coming back is loyalty to school and loyalty to team, the colors, the tradition, the pageantry, and if it looks so incredibly different than it ever has, then you lose that. And then if you're taking players off the team in the mid that would be, I would hope that would be the last straw right there.
Well, I would hope so too, Mark, but who knows? And another interesting point is they're having 8 division winners and 8 wild cards. So it would expand the college football playoff to 16 teams.
Yep.
Would you be in favor of that more than the 14 team or the 12 team to expand it to 16?
Yeah, so we have an expanded, even though technically there are less teams involved, you and I both know there in a sense are more teams involved, or really the same number of teams that have any chance of advancing. It works out mathematically into their system of 8 divisions and either 2 teams per division or the 8 wild cards probably scattered depending on the strength of these divisions. Yeah, I'm okay with it. Yeah, I'm okay with it. I'd have to see how they're selected, but the best part of all this is getting rid of this college football playoff committee, but really and securing the places of the Boston colleges and Wake Forest of the world, securing their place in big time college football. Those are the 2 best aspects of it that I've seen thus far. The rest of it does not sit well with me.
Okay, and can I talk a bit about the Florida State lawsuit win for the ACC?
Sure.
Okay, so I need help with the overall premise of Florida State's lawsuit, Mark. So Florida State believes because they make less money in TV contract, they cannot compete. Do I have that right?
Yes.
So where's the correlation between making the most money in TV revenue and winning the national championship?
Where's the correlation? Well, the correlation isn't exact, but it's close.
Well, which the Big Ten makes the most amount of TV money, right?
Yeah, they have had a slim advantage over the SEC.
So how come they aren't winning the most? Or at least close to the SEC?
But the SEC is earning close to the most and they are winning the most. So there is a correlation. It's
okay.
again, it's not exact, but there is a correlation.
Okay, then also, how come these teams are so terrible that are in the Big Ten and SEC? Like, how come a Vanderbilt or an Indiana or those type of teams are even possible? Like, if you have that much money, I figure it'd be mathematically impossible to lose, just be Vanderbilt.
That's a great question. Because what I would think would be, okay, within the conference, mathematically, not everyone can be good. Somebody's got to lose the game. So I understand that. But you would think, based on just money being the end all be all, that Indiana and Vanderbilt would go outside the conference and just pummel people, and they don't. They suck against everybody practically. I really can't answer that question. Why that's that money? I don't know off the top of my head when this disparity in income with the SEC and the Big Ten over everybody else, because it's being escalated with this new contract, but it's already in play and has been in play for quite some time. Yeah, I don't know what Indiana is doing with its television money. They're either sitting on it and using it for other things, or they're completely inept and incompetent.
Right, and these teams we're talking about, they don't even struggle just to beat or even stay competitive with the Power Five. I mean, they struggle against the Mountain West, the
Yep.
MAC, and those teams, and the disparity for those conferences is even larger, and should have lasted over a longer period of time.
You are correct when it comes to that, but there is a correlation between money and winning. It's just not a perfect correlation. It's kind of like
Right.
recruiting rankings.
Right. I don't think personally money is the as the key contributor Florida State and Clemson thinks it is.
Well, if you look at the recruiting budgets of these schools, you're right. Georgia spends the most, and then we could go through the litany of teams, and it's pretty predictable. But it's not some massive. We're not talking about tens of millions of dollars. We're talking about Georgia spends 4.2 million, and Oklahoma State spends 2 million. Which is double, but we're not talking about tens of millions of dollars that Oklahoma State, they could come up with $2 more million somewhere to spend on recruiting. So that all comes down to, and again, that's the above board money that's spent on travel and resources and all that. That's not talking about paying players.
So I like this comment because I think this is a defeatist mindset, but it's interesting from Ralph Wolf. Rutgers, Indiana, and Northwestern know they can never get past Ohio State level, so they basically just check out. That explains the conference, but you shouldn't be struggling to beat Akron and Bowling Green and those level teams.
I do agree with Ralph here. Maybe not to that extent, but I think that there's a layer of teams out there that aren't quite as bad as those teams have been most of the time, that are very content with having a look, an appearance of being competitive and collecting a bowl check, and they don't like the look of having a losing record. So I'm not going to point my finger, but I think the NC States of the world, those type of programs, Louisville, I think that they want to be good at football because there's a reputation involved there that if you're going 8-4 and you're going to bowl games, that looks good, but they're not sold out and they're not going to completely go overboard and do everything possible to win championships.
Yeah, that's interesting. So how many teams do you think actually then try to win the national championship every year?
If you go beyond the coaches and the players themselves, I truly believe that there's a spirit of competitiveness, and these guys are true competitors that I think if you go to a place like Kansas State, that there are actually players in that locker room that think that they want to step on the field with anyone and compete. And they're obviously usually a top 20 type team, but they don't have a shot at. Ralph here in the chat is saying 20 to 25 teams. Uh, well, we know that 20 or 25 teams don't have a shot at winning the national championship. So you're saying, I'm saying above the coach's line, going to maybe even beyond the athletic director, how many schools have the mindset that we want to win national championships and we are willing to pay the price financially and otherwise to do it? I think there's like 8 to 10, somewhere in that range. I don't think Wisconsin has a mindset that we're going to pay at all costs whatever we need to do to win national championships, and they just fall woefully short of that. No, I think they know their place, and they want to look good. They want to fill the stadium, make a lot of money, and they even want to play at a really high level and go to like the Rose Bowl. But the national championship, I don't think Iowa. I've never heard anything out of the mouth of Kirk Ferentz, and I've got a ton of respect for him. He's had a great career. He is a legitimate Hall of Fame coach. He sends like the sixth or seventh most players to the NFL. All of these things. He never, and Corey and I have this conversation all the time because I turn around and then I listen to Ryan Day's news conference and they're speaking on completely different levels. Kirk Ferentz will make comments about, well, we're fourth at this and we're fifth at this, and we've got the fifth best record, blah blah blah. And I got to stop and think and be like, they don't have the fifth. Oh, in the Big Ten, got it. He has a complete blinders on to the college football playoff. He does not even think about that. Whereas Ryan Day makes the comment about every other week, oh, I understand I can't lose a game here. Like and this is Iowa. This is a team that can finish in the top 10 to 15 in the country.
To me, that's more of a bigger problem with the sport than almost anything else right there that we just outlined. If we were able to redistribute the talent in a way that's equitable, since, Mark, these are going to be employees and they're going to be paid and unionized and all that stuff. If whoever was able to do that, then could we enforce like a talent ceiling on these teams? So, like Ohio State, you only allowed to have 3 5-stars, and Northwestern has to have 2 5-stars going forward if these were employees.
Yes.
And do you think that would solve a lot of these? Do you think it would increase the parity of the sport and
it's not going to happen.
Why don't you think that could happen?
So the way everything's going, it should happen because this is becoming a professional sport. Therefore, I liken the NFL to any major corporation that has offices in Buffalo, Jacksonville, Los Angeles, etc. So you get hired and you get sent to the Buffalo office. That's what happens in the NFL. You get drafted, unless your name's Eli Manning, you get sent to wherever you're needed. And so if we're truly headed down this path in college football, we will see the same thing in college football. However, there's a component there about going to school and having a decision and a choice of where you want to go to school and play football that I just think is going to get in the way of all that. And it should get in the way of all that. But everything else is going to look professional. But the 5-star coming out of Orlando, Florida, is still going to have his choice between whatever school he wants to go to, rather than the college football league, the Super League, saying you're going to Boise State because they drafted you. I just don't see it going to that degree.
Well, that's fine, Mark. Maybe you're a bit more optimistic than me in that approach because I think it could eventually end up going that way. I
Well, I
mean,
would hate to see it go that way on one hand because of amateurism, but if it's going to go this route, I would almost like to say, you know what, this is a good early adult lesson to these kids coming out of high school that if this is what you truly want, then this is what you're going to get. And you've got no choice over, you're going to play in the college football league. And so we are telling you where you're going to play.
right, right. And, they want, in my opinion, if you want all the benefits of being athletes and employees and all that stuff, then you're going to have to at least take a few of the downsides to it. I don't think you get to be able to eat your cake, have your cake and eat it too.
Well, that's where they are right this second.
I understand, and that's why things are going to be changing.
They can
Things
go
are
wherever
going.
they want to go. They can make whatever they can possibly make, but they're still treated like kids. They're still college kids. And so they get to go wherever they want to play. Yeah.
Right. Well, anyway, good. Good talking to you, Mark. I'll see you next time.
Thanks, Daryl. Appreciate it. Let's keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. We have yet to read through this, but we will. But we want to take this call from the Defiant one here.
Hey, Mark, how's it going?
It's going pretty well. Sorry for the delay. Appreciate your patience.
Oh no, it's all good, Mark. It's all good. Yeah, but this Super League. I was gonna bring up a proposal. I think that'd be kind of interesting for this if the Super League goes through. I know there's promotion relegation, and you brought up the Premier League in England and how that works and everything. But wouldn't it be interesting though to see the bottom team play a top team in like a promotion game, like a playoff type format?
Okay, so backtrack a little bit for me and set me up. I'm not that smart. So when you say the worst team in college football is going to play the best team, so everybody's going to play in the playoffs.
No. So I mean, the bottom team in the Super League will play the top team and the other 50 teams, and they'll battle it out for that spot instead of getting promoted automatically.
I got you. So when is that game going to take place?
I was thinking during bowl season, if there is a bowl season or anything like that. Like
I like that. No,
after championships, the playoffs, and all that stuff. Like later on.
So this is good here, Defiant, because basically all the juice and energy has been sapped out of bowl season.
Mm-hmm.
One of the better suggestions I've heard in the last couple of years pales in comparison to yours, but it's that at least, get rid of all these. For as much as I loved them back in the day, knowing that the 3 seed in the SEC is going to play the 3 seed in the Big Ten in the Citrus Bowl, I loved all that. But that day is come and gone, that basically a committee that has some brains and understands college football should be able to look at matchups and say, you know what? Brian Kelly against Notre Dame. People want to see that. That's going to be a game. Not if one of them's 11-1 and the other 6-6, but if they're relatively in the same stratosphere. And then, Lincoln Riley against Oklahoma, all those sorts of matchups. But what you're getting at is survival. That would be phenomenal. So let's say the 10 worst teams in the power, whatever they are, the power 8, I guess, would play the 10 best teams in the group of 5 for inclusion into the next year's power 8 league. That would be fascinating. And those games would be in December. They'd be bowl games. I like that.
Because like, again, if Vanderbilt goes 3-9, there's really no incentive for them to try to win a game in the Power 8 or whatever. At least if they're playing another team, like say Western Kentucky is trying to move up, there's an incentive. There's a reason why they want to win the game. It's because one of them wants to get promoted and the other one wants to stay promoted.
Now, see, the only thing that seems different than what you're suggesting and the way this may go is that their teams in this format that are susceptible, they are the lower end.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning the Indianas and the Vanderbilts are protected under this.
Okay.
Again, I haven't read through the entire thing, but I did catch that the 70 that are already in the Power 4, they're already protected. So Vanderbilt can continue to go on and be as bad as they want to be, and they're protected. It's the 10 additional teams that are going to be.
So the G5, like Memphis, Army, these teams you're talking about.
They're going to be subject to having to. So Vanderbilt can go 1-11 the next 10 years, and Memphis could be like a really good team, but they're susceptible to dropping out. But what do you think about this, though? The only thing I don't like from a drama standpoint, I love your idea. What I don't like about it is if you have a really good, well, what is going to be a Power 8 team, one of these final 10, let's say it is a Tulane or a Memphis, and you play really good football for 4 or 5 consecutive years, you're going 8-4, 7-5 against all these really good teams you're having to play, and then you have one down year. I don't necessarily think you should get the boot for that.
No, and again, that's why I say you have a game, because at least you have a chance, you know. But the system right now, they're saying you get relegated automatically if you go 3-9. So at least with a game, you have a chance, a 50-50 chance of staying promoted. You have a chance. That's all I'm saying. They need a chance.
No, I like the concept. And again, I think that those would be extremely exciting games. We would have, Memphis taking on Appalachian State and all these high-end group of 5s taking on the low end of the Power 8 for survival.
Yeah, and again, that's how you do it over in England. I know that for sure. Just a couple, that's how one of their systems is. You play a promotion relegation playoff, and you get promoted, or you stay at the level.
Well, another facet that would be difficult to predict would be the coach would have huge incentive because he's coaching at the school and he wants to continue to play big boy football. His players would have incentive, at least the ones that are coming back next year. But anybody that's graduating out of eligibility, aside from school pride, I don't know that they're going to be invested in that game.
No, but hey, I'm just trying to give them a chance. Again, like the system isn't playing favorites, for the G5s, and I get that point as well. I also want to talk about too how the divisions will be lined out. Would it make more sense though to have the divisions as geographical as possible with the 10 teams in each of them?
Well, of course, but we put aside logic a long time ago. But I'm right there with you. I would want geographic divisions, but then I think that there's also going to have to be some type of review of how weighted these divisions are.
Yeah.
Because you got to think that the southeastern portion of this is going to be very difficult, and that might have to be somewhat interspersed elsewhere.
I mean, like I saw a video earlier by 365. They were having like the Big East and the Southwest Conference come back. And, now Miami, the Big East, and like Arkansas, Texas, Oklahoma, and the Southwest Conference. So I also think maybe, you could have some of the Big 12 teams being there, the northern teams of Big 12 being their, little division. And I mean, like our Oklahoma, Texas being like, the lower end of like a Southwest Conference type of thing.
Yeah, I divided all this years ago.
I remember watching that video and everything.
And I went with 72 because I went with a 6 conference setup of 12 each. And so 80, because we had less teams, of course, in the Power 5 at that point. We had no.
I believe you did bring back the Big East and like a name, like a conference and all that.
I sure did.
So that's what I was saying. Maybe, you have the Big East, you have a Southwest, you bring back some of these conferences, and then boom, you have, 10 teams. But I do get your point, though, about, making sure the divisions are lined up because, we don't want an NFC East type thing, one year where a team goes 6-7 or 7-6 wins their division because everybody else is just so bad. It gets automatic spots.
In the NFL, I don't have an issue with that because I think it all evens out over time. They're all professionals. They run organizations. But in college, yeah, if that were the case, most likely it would stay that way.
It would until everybody started like, well, this team made it, but this team didn't make it because they played their division, whatever, sucked because nobody else was that good. But no, I'll just, make it because I'm all about geography. I'm all about you play a team. ASU, for example, we play USC, play all these teams on the West Coast and everything, instead of playing West Virginia. But last thing I would make is I think it's funny that Florida State lost this case because I feel like everybody's like, oh, Florida State's going to win and all that stuff. And then I saw the news that Florida State lost to the ACC.
Well, if you get a chance, check out our video that we just posted with Tony Siracusa. It may not be that substantial.
Oh, no, it's not substantial, but I just saw some people like on, X now be like, oh, Florida State's going to do this. I'm like, Florida State's not going to win against the ACC because somewhere there's some type of agreement that they have that they can't breach the contract and everything. And you're technically breaching a contract, trying to get out of the TV rights and the ground rights and everything. But do you think this could affect more later down the line, like a Virginia or like maybe North Carolina, after seeing what happened to Florida State?
Well, it may cause them to continue to wait for this to implode. If I'm anybody else in this, at this point, there's no reason to take any action because they are getting their plan laid out for them. They are being able to see in real time how this is going to play out, because I don't see any difference. The only difference that Florida State and Clemson have is that they can make the argument that they are carrying the league.
Mm-hmm.
But everything else is exactly the same. The way ESPN has dealt with the ACC and the ACC with ESPN, and the way the ACC and ESPN have dealt with all its member school, all of it stays exactly the same. So you're able to save a lot of legal costs and headaches, and watch this play out and then understand where you stand after this.
Then now ties back to Super League one more time. If this Super League does go through with the 80 teams, do you think there'll still be a grant of rights, or do you think the whole league will have some type of like media deal with ESPN, ABC, or Fox?
If this take hold, this 80 teams,
yeah, if this Super League goes through, everything goes through like as the article is saying right there on your screen. How would the media deal? What do you think the media deal would be like?
Well, I don't know if they would. I just can't imagine that they would completely tear up the current media deal, but it would have to be adjusted. But we still have the same teams involved, and we still have the same media rights holders involved. So I don't know that anything would have to change, other than if they're all in it together, then they may reconsider having this split between Fox and the Big Ten, ESPN and the SEC, and all of that. It depends how it's all divided. If the SEC stays intact, and of course, with these 8 teams in a division, or 10 teams in a division, yeah, there's going to have to be trading of money to some degree, because the divisions are not going to be exactly what they are now.
No, and especially now, since again you're bringing the G5s into this now, they're not going to be making as much money, because the media market they're in, the value of the G5s coming into this.
Exactly, and that's why I guess the supplement comes in from the NFL.
All ties back to NFL. Everything ties back to NFL, I guess now.
Yeah, the NFL rules the world.
Yes, it does. It does, and not a lot of people know that, but it does.
All right, man. Anything else?
No, Mark, that was it.
Appreciate it. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Mark.
All right. I got to say, I'm enjoying many of the comments in the chat. I was wondering who Mike Fort wanted to have punched in the face with some force. And then I went back through the chat and I see that that's, yes, our good friend Jamel Hill. Yes. She has had more ridiculous takes than, and I haven't even heard a word that the woman has stated probably in more than 5 years. I have no idea where she is, what she's doing, except for basically spewing a bunch of garbage because that's what she's done for years. But there we go. Okay, let's read through this baby because, like I say, I know some bits and pieces, but I have yet to go through it myself. So let's take it straight from the screen and I'll pick apart what I am going to pick apart. So we've got Andrew Marchand and Stuart Mandel. I know the names, but I can't tell you what they do other than write college football articles. I think one of them's with The Athletic. I don't know which one. Maybe both. All right. So we've got one league overseeing college football's highest level. No more conferences as we've known them. Playoff burst decided solely on the field, promotion and relegation for smaller schools. Okay, this playoff burst decided solely on the field. That's the first issue right there. I would love to believe that, but that you can't do that. You've got 80 teams playing 12 games. You have to either get a committee involved or you have to get computers involved. So we are 3 sentences deep in this article, and there's already something wrong with this plan. You cannot decide it solely on the field. You have too many teams and you don't have enough games. This is not Major League Baseball. It's not the NFL playing 17 games with 32 teams. I would like that to be the case, but you can't do it. Explain to me how you can do that. You can't. You have to get a computer involved or you have to get a committee involved. You're going to have umpteen 9-3 teams tied for wild card spots. How is that going to be decided? They didn't play each other. You're going to have a committee. You're going to have a computer. One or the other or both. Okay, promotion and relegation for smaller schools. So either promotion, up the ranks. Wouldn't you just love to hear those conversations and those negotiations about what teams to be elevated and which teams will not? Again, if we're going from 70, the current power structure of college football, which includes, of course, the 4 conferences plus Notre Dame. Yes, because we've got 18 in the Big Ten. We've got 16 in the SEC. That's 34. We've got 16 in the Big 12. That's 50. We have 17 in the ACC. That's 67. Notre Dame makes 68. And then I guess we're including Washington State and Oregon State. So I got to cross those 2 off. And correct me if I'm off on the math. But we've got 70, including the 2 that are hanging on technically in the Pac-12. So I have added Memphis, Tulane, Army, Navy, Fresno State, San Diego State, Air Force, Boise State, but that's only 8 schools. So we need 2 more. Texas, San Antonio, and Wyoming. What distinguishes those schools? It is going to be so close, those final 5 or 6 spots and the first 5 or 6 that get left out. But at least they have the opportunity to play themselves back in. Okay, players being directly paid. Okay, while I don't like that, it's not what college football is all about. Let's understand something, that all of us have made college football this big. Therefore, money always changes things. Some of you would say money corrupts everything. It doesn't necessarily have to, but that's typically the way it goes, because what happens? People are greedy. People want their share. So you introduce money into anything unless there's some kind of moral integrity or moral mission involved, like feeding the hungry or giving shelter to the homeless, then it's going to go in a bad direction because people want to get paid. And in a sense, there's nothing wrong with that. But there was a sweet spot for college football sometime in the 70s to about 10 or 15 years ago or so, where it became so enormously popular and there was tons of money being paid, and the television networks got to a point where every game's on and we're all satisfied, but the money wasn't being distributed in such a way that people became, at least on the surface, at least out in the open, where moves were being made because of greed. There's always been greed, always will be greed. There was greed then, but the greed wasn't being acted upon. All right, so got somebody in the chat there, Jermaine, that's got an idea to solve poverty. Would love to look into that in just a second. But before we get to Keith's call, let me read just a little bit more because we've only made it 4 sentences. And the next line is players being paid directly. So I hate that. However, if it's going to go in this direction, you know what that at least does? It brings stability. Another mastermind of the NFL is that it has the perfect balance, at least what I consider to be the perfect balance of stability and also uncertainty in free agency that causes interest and excitement. So if you're an NFL fan of any team, you know that 85% of your team's coming back next year. And maybe if your team sucks, you don't really want to hear that. But basically, NFL fans enjoy that because their team's coming back next year. They can get attached to players. Most of them are going to be on your team next year. But there's also that one component of free agency that makes it interesting, makes it exciting. The free agent period starts, but not everybody can be a free agent, just a few guys per team. That makes it interesting and exciting. College football, of course, is off the rails because nobody controls the sport. Nobody has control over the sport. So everybody's a free agent if they want to be. That instability is not good for the sport. It's not good for the fan bases. So at least that would force stability because you could sign these guys to contracts once they enter school and say, here's your 1-year contract. You're at least not going to be able to do what Caden Proctor just did and leave a team, go to another school, spend all of 3 weeks there, and then leave and go back to the same. No, there will at least be none of that. And maybe you even sign these players to 2-year contracts, 3-year contracts, 4-year contracts. All right, we'll stop right there. We'll take our call from our guy, Keith. Keith, what's going on tonight?
Hey, Mark. Good discussion you guys got going on tonight, and I even got a compliment to Real. As I agreed with a lot of what he said. The bigger point I see in what you read there is the 10 new conferences and the old conferences going away. I can just see DeReal crying 5 times as much as Sharon Moore if the SEC went away and they went into conference Southeast or something like that.
Yeah. Well, I think all of us would hate to see that. I think that's just another layer of how this is going to backfire and disrupt the sport. I know that a lot of people in the chat and that will be watching this video say that they have no conference allegiance. I get that. They don't care. They don't root for the other teams in their conference. We get into that debate all the time. But there are tons of people who do, and who are, let's say, Alabama fans, who, how are they going to stomach being in a new division? Now, let's understand, they're not going to throw Alabama in a conference or a division. I guess it's going to be in a division with UCLA and Boise State and Minnesota, and it's not going to be just this random. They're going to be geographic to a certain extent, so you're going to be able to maintain rivalries to a certain extent. So they are going to look something close to what they do now. But if you no longer have an SEC, you no longer have a Big Ten. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I see this whole thing is basically a cry for help from the West Virginias and Kansas States and whoever else is out there generating this thing, that this is a cry for help, basically them playing "Don't Forget About Us." Because I agree with you, with a 12-game season, um, uh, coming to 16 playoff teams would be an absolute mess. You'd have all kinds of ties. You'd have teams with potentially losing records getting into the playoffs, and it would
I
just
don't
be
think
a
that's gonna
disaster.
happen. How's that going to happen?
If you get a particularly down conference, say in the mid South or something, where the number one team in that conference is something like a
Well, all your points, Keith, are really good points, but that one is not going to happen.
yeah,
It-
well, we see it in the NFL sometimes
no,
where
this is not the NFL. If you play in a 10-team division and you're playing 9 games against those, it's almost mathematically impossible. It basically is mathematically impossible not to have a winning record and win your division.
but it does happen in the NFL with
The
30.
NFL is different. You're only playing 6 games out of 17 in your division. Here, if I'm reading this correctly, you'd probably be playing 9 games in your division out of 12. Therefore, the number one team in the division would have a winning record.
What if there were 5 strong teams that were splitting all their games, though? Wouldn't that
Okay.
couldn't
Just
there be?
understand it's not going to happen. That's the least of the concerns here. Yes, mathematically it could happen, but it doesn't and it won't. That's not going to happen. That's not a big deal. It's just that's the at the number 178 position of concerns when it comes to all this.
Yeah. Well, put the NFL. Let's say the NFL expanded to 64 or 80 teams, and they reduced their number of games down to 12.
Yep.
Wouldn't that be a zoo rather than a football season?
Well, it becomes a zoo for the same reason that you just cited. They're telling us in the third sentence here that playoff berths are decided solely on the field, but that's impossible. You have
Um,
to involve a committee or a computer. There aren't enough games being played between these teams.
yep, yep. That's why 80, to me, 80 and 16 is just unworkable. Um, it's much more like 30 to 20, 25, 30 is the biggest you can get. And funny, that's what the NFL number ends up being.
Well, wait a minute. You want to eliminate college football teams?
Um, I believe the super conference has to be half of what they're proposing now. It has to be like 25, 30, 35 for a 16-team playoff.
Really? This is what you want?
Um, Yes, it's because only 25 to 35 teams are highly interesting each college football season. How many people would watch a game between number 35 and 36 in the college football rankings?
I watch them every week. And I'm
Um,
not saying that I'm the average fan, but I watch Virginia and Louisville play a Friday night game every week. That
um,
type of game.
yeah. Do they get 1 million viewers?
Oh, sure, they do. Not many more than 1 million, but they're in that range, 1 million, 1,000,002. And ESPN, Louisville, Virginia. I bring that up just because they did play a Friday night game this last year, and it was a really good game.
Um, yeah. What if they were on the ACC network? What would their numbers be?
Well, you could put anybody on the ACC network and nobody's going to watch. They've only got so much distribution. So you're telling me, Keith, that I'm not going to ask you your age, but you've been thinking this entire time that you've been watching college football for, I'm guessing, for decades. I guess you're roughly my age, that you've been thinking, man, there are too many teams. I wish we only had about 30 teams to watch.
Um, yeah, like I say, is that if I see um, uh, West Kentucky against Bowling Green bowl game, I have just very little interest in that bowl game.
Okay.
I
Well,
only watch 1 out of 10 or 1 out of 20 of those
okay.
games.
You've taken us down to like slots 90 to 110 with that one.
Um, okay.
But you're talking about putting together a league of like 32 teams and everybody else is gone. So you're eliminating Boston College and Kansas and schools like that. They're gone.
Right. Yes. Yes. I think inevitably that's where this is going to go. And
Well, I understand
basically,
it could go that way. I'm just trying to make a distinction, Keith, because it sounds like that's what you want to have happen.
um, I basically do. You know,
Okay.
I don't like seeing Michigan against Honolulu or Ohio State against Kent State. I mean, just you know, those games just don't interest me that
But you
much.
don't even want to see Ohio State play Indiana or Michigan play Purdue.
Um, yes, I would not cry if those games went away.
Wow.
I still want to watch those, but I'm not against teams like Indiana, Purdue, and Minnesota getting relegated if they can't perform well enough.
Wow. So you're going to beat these guys up. Like every game's going to be Oklahoma playing Clemson.
Yep, yep.
Right?
That would be good. That would be fun football to watch.
I am not telling you you're wrong, Keith, because there's no right or wrong here. I'm just clarifying. Okay.
Yep, yep. I would much rather see a Texas Michigan than Ohio State Kent State.
Okay. Anything else, Keith?
Um, uh, yeah. It's the last thing I would say is that if you look at the NCAA Big Dance model,
Yep.
the um, the teams that are in the play-in, the teams that are trying to get promoted, the last four in, the teams that are getting promoted, they have to go play the last four in. Um, and that's a good competitive model. It's getting to the kind of games that I'm interested in again, and it's not having uh, Kentucky, who's the last four in, playing Stephen F. Austin, who's the championship of the Mid Atlantic Athletic Conference, whatever. It would just be a boring, um, 9 times out of 10 blowout game. But the Big Dance does it. They make the last four in play the first four in. So I think promotion relegation would be much more like that. And my son is a favorite of is really enjoys the English Premier League soccer, and I've been following it a little bit for the last few years as a bonding tool. And the relegation games at the bottom are very good, and they call them 6-point swings. And relegation would be a very fun part of major college football if ever got in. I know they've never done it, but when it's good TV, um, it'll find its way in.
All right, Keith. Anything else for us tonight?
Nope. Good talking to you, Mark.
Appreciate you being here.
Okay.
All right. We will keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. I will just finish up this first paragraph. We could be here all night at this rate, but that's good. You're calling in. We got McD standing by. So players being paid directly. So again, don't like that. Don't want that. But the system's making $1 zillion, number one. So we can't leave them out of it. And also, yes, they've earned the money. And so it's going to be paid one way or the other. So the way to counter that, or at least bring a stabilizing element to it, is to sign contracts and also include their tuition as being part of their pay. Few things have pissed me off than people that have called here or commented for years that they don't get paid and their scholarship doesn't mean anything and education doesn't mean anything. Those people probably have not paid for a college education or paid for a spouse or a child to have a college education. It's worth a lot of money, or it is proposed to be worth a lot of money. It's worth a lot less today than it's been in the past, but that's a whole other topic. Don't get me started on that. All right, we got McD here. McD, what's going on tonight?
Hey, Mark, can you hear me good?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Sounds good. So I know I haven't called in a few months. Just been busy and stuff, but I've been watching all this play out and I saw the news today about the 80 teams. To me, that's the best news that has come out in like months. I think college football. I'll be honest with you. I'm kind of been distant with college football with the whole Power Two. And I know my team's in the Power Two. I mean, we're not a good team in the Power Two, obviously, but I mean, college football. To me, college football is being ruined by the Big Ten and the SEC, and I'm for this. This like 80 teams. You take the 70 Power Five teams plus SMU, I guess, or the 69 plus SMU, and then you do the. From what I've read, it's the top 10 other teams, and it's kind of like a European soccer model. I'm for this. I mean, you have fair scheduling. You actually have teams that will have a legit shot every year. I think across the board. I'm for this. I'm absolutely for this. I think this is the best thing. I think you just get rid of the conferences at this point, make everybody independent, and go from there. Because let's be real, the Big 12, people are saying the Big Two. I still think the Big 12 is a power conference at the end of the day with the teams in it. They can't compete with the SEC and Big Ten legitimately in football. They can't. So I'm for this. I say let's do it and see what happens.
Okay, where do I begin? First and foremost, you're tearing the fabric of the sport apart.
It's already torn apart.
Well, no, there's a Big Ten conference. There's an SEC conference where the great majority of those schools have been in those conferences for like 100 years. So it's not been torn completely to shreds. No.
No. I mean, like.
No, Ohio State, Michigan State, Purdue, Indiana, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa. They have been members of the Big Ten forever.
That is true. But
you could say the same thing in the SEC.
That is true, but at the same time, does it? In my opinion, and I mean, I'm 24. I've only been watching college football for 10, 15 years. I've seen plenty of college realignment from the Big East dispersing, from Nebraska, Maryland, Rutgers joining the Big Ten. does conferences really matter? I mean, we watched Colorado leave for the Pac-12 and then come back to the Big 12. Does it like, really matter, or I mean, does it matter about money? I mean, I think some. I mean, yeah, some mid-level, not mid-level programs, but some of the middle teams in the Big Ten and SEC might not make as much money, but they would have a better chance competing, in my opinion, in the NIL world than what they are right now. Like I look at Minnesota, Purdue, some of those teams in the SEC, like Kentucky, Vanderbilt, they have no chance to compete for national championships ever, in my opinion, with the way this is set up. To me,
Yeah.
only 16 teams or 15 teams really only have a chance to really compete for a national championship year in and year out. You'll get your Cinderella story once every
15 or
5, 6 years.
16?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that might,
I think you're stretching it.
yeah, I was going to say, and that might even be pushing it. I mean, I don't think even a team like Florida can compete for a national championship. If you really want my honest opinion,
Well,
you,
they aren't doing that right now,
well,
but
they're not right now.
can they compete for a national championship? Well, they just won one 16 years ago.
They did, but remember that was also a different era of college football. This is a new era of NIL, and I mean, you saw Florida; they couldn't pay the one athlete, and he committed there, but then he left because of the NIL situation. I just think I'm for this. I'm absolutely for this. I think this is the best thing that can happen if you want a good competitive league.
Okay. So if Maryland goes into some conference or it's going to be a division, they're in some sterile, practically nameless division that has no tradition, no nothing, means nothing. They're just thrown in, and I'm guessing that geography is going to be
Well, yeah,
part of that. They're not going to be thrown in with,
right.
UCLA and Washington, but they're going to sit there with Virginia and Virginia Tech and West Virginia and whomever else in a division.
I
And
wouldn't. Sorry for interrupting you. I wouldn't even go with divisions with this. I would just have a free fall 80 team league. I would just sit there. You have your protective rivalries, obviously. So Maryland, they'll play West Virginia, Virginia. They'll probably want to try to play the North Carolina schools. They'll probably want to try to play Rutgers. But I mean, I would just say you would play the teams in this 80 team league only and just have it be a free fall, have a 8, 12, 16 team playoff, and
how are you selecting these playoff teams?
by record and resume.
So you're getting a computer involved.
Yep. I mean, it already is. I mean, you look at the committee this year. I mean, I'll be honest with you, Mark. I was kind of done with college football after Florida State did not get into the college football playoffs. I mean, that tells you all you need to know. That I mean, the ACC is not a serious conference. I mean, if they can't get a 13-0 team in the college football playoffs, I mean, I mean, we're already basically at the power 2.5 if you count the Big 12. I think this works out for everybody. I mean, you take your 70 teams, you have. I'm not the biggest fan of the European style for the quote unquote group of 5 teams, but you take the top 10 from them, and they kind of have to play their way year in and year out. But I mean, you're still gonna probably get the same 4 to 5 teams competing every year for a championship. But I think it's I'm for this because I think this is the most competitive way college football can be moving forward. I mean, only the top 5 teams in the SEC and Big Ten are really gonna be competing for college football championships. No, but I mean the Big 12, they'll get their 2 bids. The ACC, as constructed, even though I think the ACC is in a lot of trouble, they're gonna get their 2 bids. I mean, they're gonna get ran off the field. They can't compete with these They can't compete with the Big 2 conferences. So I'm for just stripping it down, just having one big super league, and
How is that going to change anything
I think
based on
it's
what you just said?
I think you're going to have a more competitive field. Like, I don't think Alabama could sit there and say, we're in the SEC, we have A, B, and C. Alabama's going to sit there and have their protective rivals against Auburn and LSU and one or two other schools. But then you have someone make the schedule and they have to face teams all over the country. They can't sit there. You also have other teams like Ohio State. It's going to be the same thing. Yeah, they'll have their protected rivals with like Michigan. They'll probably have Penn State. They'll probably have Michigan State. Probably another team or two. But they're not going to sit there and I mean,
Well,
their whole season is not going to be wrapped around two big games. Their whole season is going to be wrapped around 5 to 6 big games.
Well, that's how it's going to be going forward in the Big Ten anyway.
That's true.
You are mixing your take on this and what is being proposed here. When you talk about all these protected rivals, their protected rivals are going to be the teams that they play in their division. Whatever those divisions are, that's who these teams are going to play every year.
I mean, and I wouldn't even do the divisions. I'm looking at this
Well, I
as
hear
not.
that's what you're saying, but that's not what they're saying.
I know that's not what they're saying, but I would not even do the divisions. Now, if you do the divisions, obviously, then you'll probably have the division champ out of the 8, and I would just do an 18 playoff, and whoever wins out of that 18 playoff wins the national championship. That's how I would do it. Now, granted, I don't know how that will work with the rolling 10 teams from the group of 5, but in my opinion, I would not even do divisions with this. I think even with divisions, because you're going to have the SEC still with the 10 teams. They'll kick out, will probably be the original 10 teams. You'll have your Big 10 with the original 10 teams. You'll bring back the Pac-10, which is nice. And you'll bring back the Big East, bring back some, the Mountain West, I think will have some version in this. But you still have these leagues that I feel like will like half of their schedule is going to be a bye because they're top heavy leagues. You look at the SEC, the original 10 teams. I will say Alabama, LSU, and Georgia are really the only 3 teams that I feel like can really compete for a national championship year in and year out in the SEC. So you're going to have 3 big games every year. If you're the SEC in the Big Ten, from recent history, Michigan or Ohio State. I know Michigan State made it once, but they're nowhere close to competing for a national championship today. You're really only going to have one big game. I know Penn State fans might get upset at that, but James Franklin can't be a top 10 team save his life. So I think you just go divisionless with this. Before you have someone create the schedule, and at minimum every team they're going to get their protected 4 to 5 rivals. One of those rivals are usually going to probably be a big game for the bigger teams, and then you're probably get another big game or two with the scheduling because of the way how the scheduling works. You have to be like, it'll be like you have to play such a team that was ranked such a previous season. So that's how I'm looking at it. I'm just excited that this is getting talked about because I actually thought about this a few weeks ago, just thinking on my own. So I just wanted to put my 2 cents into it.
All right, McD. It's an interesting 2 cents. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Mark. Go Terps.
So we've gone from a situation in college football where the conference schedule has been obviously the bulk of the schedule, 9 or 8 out of 12 games. And before that, 8 or 9 out of 11 games, going back 15 to 20 years. And then these teams have gone out and scheduled whatever they wanted to, whoever they could find, whatever their agenda was in terms of scheduling, like one big marquee game and then a couple of cream puffs or whatever, all cream puffs. If you're Baylor, you've always scheduled cream puffs. You don't want to play anyone. To almost a place where I thought that was extreme with us having to watch. For example, and Iowa State, they have the most boring schedule in college football. They have, for the past 10 plus years, played everyone in their conference, 9 games. That's the way it should be. That's good. But then they play Iowa outside the conference, and then they schedule 2 lackluster teams, and that's their schedule every year. We've gone from that model, that extreme of really relegating and limiting these schools to this stringent schedule that's very much the same, looks the same every year, to the possibility of this wild card scheduling. And I think that is going in the other extreme. And again, it all depends on what these 10-team divisions look like. I do think that they're going to be geographically based, but they're also going to have to measure that geographic continuity with the strength of the forecasted strength of these divisions. Okay. As we finish the first paragraph, we see that the transfer portal and NIL will be managed. Well, the transfer portal is much easier to manage. Not saying that there aren't complexities there, but it's simply, okay, we go to an NFL style situation where the transfer portal's only open for a couple times a year. And obviously now it gets extended based on coaches leaving. That would have to be under evaluation, because if these players are strictly paid employees of this league, then what's it matter if the coach leaves? If the coach leaves an NFL team or gets fired, that doesn't mean that NFL players are able to be just automatic free agents. So the transfer portal, yes, needs to be managed. And if these players are under contract, it's going to be self-manage itself, at least to start. That's a foundational piece that manages it. So that's a good thing. NIL, the legalities and the tidiness of it needs to be managed. But basically, these players have unlimited NIL possibilities, and there's nothing wrong with that. We live in America. You should have an unlimited ability to earn money. I should have an unlimited ability to earn money. They should have an unlimited ability to earn money. That's how I look at it. And if there are NIL collectives and companies out there that are willing to pay players to be spokesmen for their teams, for their companies, I should say, then so be it, and they can make whatever they want. But I would think, unlike the issue now, is that any company that gets involved in NIL cannot mandate to that player that they're going to stay on that particular team to get paid, that they would be able to do this in the future. So there are pluses to these players becoming employees, limited transfers, and an NIL that would cause them to have to fulfill their commitments, and no opt-outs for postseason games. They're employees. They finish out the schedule. They have to play, or else they have violated their contract. You should probably put that in their scholarship anyway. We don't see players opting out of regular season games. What's the difference? There really is no difference. The games count. They count on the record of the teams. But because nobody's in charge of the sport, everybody's allowed to just opt out of games. Mike says no opt-outs is a pipe dream. Well, it doesn't have to be a pipe dream. If the players are employees, it's not going to be a pipe dream. Then you sue them. You don't pay them. Okay? You're speaking in a different world, a past status of college football. But if we're going forward with this, you can hold them to their contract. And we make money playing postseason games. Therefore, if we're going to continue the system which creates the money, it's to have the players play in the games. So you have to show up to keep the system going. Okay. Dion says, unhook football from the universities and start over. Well, if that happened, I guess that would be the last straw for me, and I'd have to check out on that whole deal. Then why am I watching these guys play an inferior brand of football? Then I'm just going to watch the NFL. I understand that there are people that watch the whatever basketball league, what it used to be, the NBDL. People used to watch that. Why? I don't know. People watch minor league baseball, but very, very few. All right. Then it says a group of influential leaders wants to make all this happen soon, and they are pitching it as the best way forward for a sport they believe needs saving. Several college presidents, Roger Goodell's primary lieutenant at the NFL, and some of sports' top executives have devised a plan, dubbed by outsiders as a super league, to completely transform college football. Those involved in the group, College Sports Tomorrow, told The Athletic. Although the plan has drawn skepticism from within the sport's current institutions, the people behind the ideas believe they must be implemented. Current model for governing and managing college athletics is dead, Syracuse Chancellor Kent Syverud told The Athletic during an interview. West Virginia President Gordon Gee, who is near and dear to Ohio State fans, of course, we are in an existential crisis. Syverud and Gee are part of the CST, a 20-person group, which also includes the NFL's number 2 executive, Brian Rolapp, Philadelphia 76ers owner David Blitzer, and lead organizer Len Perna of Turnkey ZRG, the search firm that places nearly all the top conference commissioners, including recently the Big Ten's Tony Petitti. They are trying to implement a drastically new system that would replace the NCAA and college football playoff and potentially provide a solution for the hurricane of current and future lawsuits aimed at the business of the sport, plus the NIL and transfer portal issues that they believe have put college athletics as a whole in peril. The current CST outline would create a system that would have the top 70 programs, all the teams in the 5 major conferences, plus Notre Dame and new ACC member SMU, a permanent member, so they're not going to lose their standing. Then the perpetual members would be in a 7. Okay, the perpetual members play in those 10-team divisions, so there's 7 of those. That's 70, and then you got this 8th division that would be promoted from the second tier. The 50-plus second division teams would have the opportunity to compete their way into the upper division, creating a promotion system similar to the European Football League, which we all so dearly love. The 70 teams are not in any danger of moving down just those 10 teams from what is now the group of 5. The playoffs would not require a selection committee, as the 8 division winners and 8 wildcards from the top tier would go to the postseason. Yes, it does. It either requires a committee or a computer, because you cannot break that many ties based on what happened on the field. You didn't play enough games. Wildcard spots would be determined by record and tiebreakers, much like the NFL. Unless you made it, the only way you could do that and completely leave committees and computers out of it, you would have to go with a points differential system. Or the next suggestion would be some kind of a strength of schedule that requires a computer. So it's not like the NFL. CST borrows ideas from leagues like the NFL, Premier League, and MLS to create a system that they believe would bring more television value and sustainability. Not coincidentally, some of its most influential members have direct ties to those leagues. Thus far, the group is struggling to gain traction with the schools that would play in their proposed Super League. The ACC Board of Directors heard a presentation from the group in February. However, planned dinners with administrators from the Big Ten, the SEC, and the Big 12 all were called off. Spokespersons from the Big Ten and the SEC said Commissioners Petiti and Greg Sankey, respectively, have not met with Perna's group. That's because the SEC and the Big Ten have put together an advisory committee, and so they've got their own plan on how to handle the sport. Leagues have been hesitant and canceled meetings so as not to upset their current broadcast partners, including ESPN and Fox, according to one executive briefed on the commissioner's thoughts. Chief among the obstacles this new venture faces are the billions of dollars in TV deals that all the top conferences have locked in with the major networks. And we see those there. The Big Ten's deal runs through 2029, Big 12 2030, the SEC 2033. One CST executive said that the major networks with existing deals would likely need to buy into the plan before it would go to the open market. Universities would own a percentage of the league, a model derived from the MLS, where it was devised by former President Mark Abbott, who was involved with CST. Unlike the soccer league, the revenue distribution would not be an even split among all competitors, as top brands like Alabama and Notre Dame would receive more of the financial pie. I'm fine with that, although I want that just to be a slice of the financial pie. I want some of the slices of the financial pie to be distributed equally. I think there needs to be a balance of the two. That's what works best. CST believes there would be added value in negotiating TV deals as one entity and creating broadcast windows that make more sense, much like the NFL's approach. Well, there is truth to that, because right now, the leagues and the networks are going to put the games on that they want to put on. And sometimes you've got a logjam of really good games on at the same time, and other times you've got dead spots in the schedule, and that could be corrected. While the CST model would eliminate the long-time conference structure for football, it would create one entity to negotiate with a prospective union that would represent the players on NIL, transfer portal, and salary structure rules. It doesn't have to, though. They could do that and still maintain the conference structure. This embrace of collective bargaining. Let's go back to a 10-team Big Ten, whatever the ACC was at a long, long time ago, back in the 80s and 90s, pre-Florida State, Miami. Same thing with the SEC, where there was 10 teams. You bring back the Big 12 and the Southwest Conference. You could pretty much take this back with some tweaks to 1980. And then you keep the teams in the conferences that people are familiar with and that have loyalty to and are attached to. You don't need to blow up the conferences. You could do all of this and keep generally the conferences intact. The only way to solve the problem is to have a solution that is legally defensible, politically acceptable. Love to have that one explained. Commercially prudent, of course, and is able to strike a partnership with student athletes in a way that's really good for them, which means pay them. College administrators are particularly concerned about the House versus NCAA class action suit in Northern California seeking NIL revenue denied to athletes prior to 2021 rules changes. Wait a minute. I'm a bit confused. Seeking NIL revenue denied to athletes. Okay, I understand the athletes' stance on this, but what was truly NIL collected? And wasn't that just booster money collected by the schools for the schools and the conferences' distribution of the money? Because prior to that, there was no such thing technically of an NIL collective, and companies and private citizens that wanted to deal with the NIL collective to give X number of amounts of money to the athletes. That one would have to be explained to me. If the plaintiffs are successful, the NCAA and the power conferences could be on the hook for billions in damages. Well, I understand that, yes, like it just says there, the House case is one of several potentially crippling federal antitrust suits. That's the key term right there. Antitrust suits related to athlete employment rights and NIL compensation. Again, let's look at this for a second from a financial standpoint. You take any team anywhere in college football that has 85 scholarships, and if you're going to pay them $100,000 a year on average, that's an $8.5 million payroll. And if you've got 80 teams, that is let me do the math, $680 million payroll for the league. Without the NFL's help, I don't think college football can sustain a model in which they're paying that type of salaries to every team in this league. And so I guess that's why they need the NFL. I don't know why the NFL needs to be involved at all. I don't know. I don't even understand their interest in it because they compete. Not that they don't squash college football, because they do in terms of attention. They already do whatever they want. They knock college football right off the TV anytime they want. College football's got to flee on New Year's Day. They've got to flee anytime the NFL shows up. So I don't know why the NFL, as long as that they know that there's viable college football going on, producing players, developing players for them to use as players, as their product, why they need to be involved or would want to be involved. Perna started on the project 3 years ago and is viewed as its figurehead. He is well connected in college sports through his role at Turnkey. According to two executives briefed on the proposal, one reason the FBS commissioners last month self-imposed a March 15th deadline to approve the 6-year college football playoff extension was to stave off CST's push. During the Athletics reporting, executives involved in college football were inquiring, what do you know about the Perna roll-up group? They conveyed alarm about what could be formulated, along with doubt as to why this group would be the one to solve the complex issues facing the NCAA. While critics in media and college sports who have heard about CST have warned of private equity's involvement, Perna insists this is not a money-making venture for the individuals in the group. He said CST raised initial money to pay for fees incurred, but declined to say how much. The plan is for the new format to create more revenue on the premise that there is more TV money to be generated in a model comparable to the NFL's TV setup. All right. They would sure know more about that than I. They've probably worked it out, figured that out, put together a model. I don't see a plan where you would have any more college football on than what you already have. ESPN's pumping out college football games all day. ESPN2, ESPNU, Fox, FS1, ABC, and then you've got scattered games on NBC and CBS, and you've got a full slate on the ACC network, the SEC network, CBS Sportsnet. Yeah, other than being smarter about the distribution of games, I don't see where they're going to create that much more revenue. But again, I might be wrong. We've been looking at something that's large enough that it gives everybody a chance to compete, that doesn't translate to about 70 schools, that also creates content that's more valuable so that it generates the resources to do more things that the university presidents think are important for college sports. It is not the case that the money to do what's right for our college athletes in football is just going to emerge from nowhere. Somehow it has to be generated. That's what we're trying to figure out. Multiple prominent college leaders in recent months have spoken bluntly about a future in which schools directly pay their players. Private equity funding could provide schools an influx of capital to address those legal matters and competitively compensate their athletes in return for a stake in the school's athletics business. College administrators claims that CST is trying to buy college football. CST countered that it's only trying to create a system for football that in turn would result in the finances needed for non-revenue generating sports to survive and thrive. Under the plans, the non-football sports would stay in their current conference structure. So this is only for college football, and every other way the conferences, so this is kind of screwed up. Think about this, that if this only goes into effect for football, first of all, this screws up rooting interests in terms of, again, having that connection to the teams in your conference and all of that. So it's only going to be in football, and then everything else you watch, there's going to be the old conferences. However, the old conferences have already been screwed up by football. So you already have Rutgers in the Big Ten, USC and UCLA in the Big Ten, and all these other things. Would they just restructure the rest of college sports to go back to a more geographic model? Because they certainly wouldn't want to stay in this particular system now that's been, again, created by football. Okay. Athletes need to be paid and are going to be paid. Most of the rules against paying athletes, including some of those that are still in place, are likely to fall in the courts. We're going to need to sustain women's sports, Olympic sports, and we're going to have competitive equity. Okay. Well, if college football is thriving and having to become this professional league because it's been so successful, why do we have to have all these other sports? If the marketplace does not support them, then why are they necessary? And as long as private citizens, private companies support these Olympic sports, I have no issue with it. I don't know how they're funded right now. Hopefully, it's not by taxpayer money. Why should taxpayer money go into sports that people don't care about and don't watch? For all that, I think you need a more centralized national college league. CST is not alone in trying to find solutions. The SEC and the Big Ten, the two most powerful football conferences. Yes, that's what I alluded to before. They've already formed this advisory alliance. I don't know how fully developed it is behind closed doors. At least one school, Florida State, has been actively exploring a private equity partnership of its own. Rolep's involvement in CST has raised eyebrows. He was the mastermind of the NFL's current $110 billion TV deal that has been sought for top college commissioner jobs. While it is in the best interest of the NFL to have its feeder system of college football be strong, executives briefed on Rolep's role insist the league is not involved. Oh, the league is not involved. Okay, that's good. Rolap declined comment. CST leaders maintain their intentions are pure. Of course they are. And that they are in a hurry to get going. An avalanche of legal activity could dramatically increase the likelihood that their plan or something like it could take hold. Even prior to the day of potential foundational change, CST wants to lead from the front, not behind. Speed is our friend. There it is. All right. So my Super League is forthcoming, both from the standpoint of what's being proposed here as an 80-team league, and then also what I put together a few years ago that needs to be tweaked, but a 72-team 6-conference league with 12 teams per conference. And then I'm just going to run through some stipulations that I have with NIL and with the transfer portal that I don't pretend to know the best way to set all that up, but I do know of a number of things that would be best in the interest of the sport to be part of that. All right, folks, we do appreciate y'all being here at the Voice of College Football. Enjoy the rest of the night. Enjoy the All Clemson show that we provide on the Clemson channel. That should be starting up here in a minute. We also have the Big 12 Fan Zone show that's going on as well. You'll catch us here on the Big Ten show Fridays at 7 p.m. Eastern time. So just 24 hours from right now, we've got the Big Ten live show going on. So please give me a call tomorrow night to talk Big Ten football and be looking out for the videos. We cranked out today the discussion with Tony Siracusa from Last Word on College Football on this whole Florida State situation and the denial by the federal court judge concerning the motion of Florida State against the ACC. So check in with that conversation. And then also, we've got our Big Ten player rankings, quarterback, running back, wide receivers. Check out the videos. All right, folks, appreciate you being here. We will continue to roll on with all this mess and more here at the Voice of College Football. Thanks for stopping by.